And we're live.
Hello.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where I'm very, very warm. I think everyone here is very, very warm. I actually subscribe to what Hannah's doing, as in Hannah down there, that way, with all the curtains closed. Like I'm here for the vibe. We are here to talk about LGBTQ plus reps for Total Bollix Book Club. Yes.
Oh, it's been a while. Lizzie doesn't remember what they're supposed to say.
No, I don't remember. Does anyone want to introduce themselves?
Sure. Hi, I'm Abby from Abbey of Pelennor, and I mainly read fantasy sci-fi books, but I managed to read 3 LGBTQ plus books. Here is your sneak peek of mine.
I am Hannah of the Bookworm's Feast. I was just double checking that I actually typed it in right, because who knows right now? I am very tired and very hay fevery, so bear with me. But I read whatever. I am not picky, as Hannah can probably attest. And yeah, I have not been doing a lot of editing lately though, so we'll see how this goes.
It's been too hot.
Otherwise-
I'm with you on that. It's too hot for things.
It is. I don't cope in hot weather at all.
No, Hannah and I straight up should hibernate through the summer months and then just come back out when it's cold and sweater weather again.
Yep.
I'm also Hannah from Ladder M, and I didn't like my book this month, so it's gonna be interesting.
Am I the only one who did? Apart from Celine, who's not able to make it because she's not well.
Depends on which one I talk about. I have a stack of 4 next to me.
Oh.
They're mixed, mostly positive, but they are mixed.
I did consider grabbing a couple of other LGBT books that I adored that I could recommend regardless, but I feel like I'm going to be a while, so.
And I'm Lizzie from Bombadil's Bookish Things. You're on my channels. If you don't know me, what are you doing here? I'm joking. Just hi.
And if you're new here, subscribe.
Sure, all that good stuff. I haven't been creating content, so you know, it's what it is. Anywho's, who wants to go first to talk about?
I think you should. You're clearly sentient enough.
Clearly, Abby, let's go with you.
I was like, I will take that bullet for you. Whereas I was like, bus?
Right. Do you want the book where I have the most thoughts, the book that is the most LGBTQ plus, or the book that is the least LGBTQ plus?
Most thoughts, please.
Most thoughts. Iron Widow by, I apologize in advance to everybody from the nation of China, Zeran J. Zhao, which I've probably said wrong, hence the apology. This is a YA, I think, sci-fi that focuses on a lot of, well, it melds together a lot of different time periods in ancient China. And melds together a lot of, I guess, pop history of like what we'll know in the West. So things like the feet binding, and just the heavy patriarchy, and also puts in, I forget what it's called, when you there's an anime or a manga where people go inside robots and control them.
Oh, the mech suits, yeah.
That's this. So it's technically kind of a spoiler, but at the same time, I think it's been wrecked enough now that it's not a spoiler anymore. The reason that this is LGBTQ plus is because it is a polyamorous relationship in here. And that was one of my complaints. And I don't think it's fair, but it's still a complaint. Right, no, wait.
Lizzie now has thoughts too.
No. I love a polyamorous book. Why did it take until 70% of the way through?
I think we all know why it took that long. I think we all know why.
I don't, because I've not read it, but
and we all know that the sequel, I'm hyped for the sequel because the author has said it's not going to be romantic. Everyone take this whole thing. And I'm like, ooh, which one of them is going to kill the first one, like each other in the sequel? Who's going to kill who? Because if it doesn't end in death, what's the point?
What's the point?
That's one word. But yeah, I do think that if you go, obviously no one here can, but if you go into this not knowing it's polyamory, it's probably a perfectly fine timeline. But like that's one of my issues, is that going into it knowing that it's polyamorous, I was like, it's taking too fucking long. Like just get on with it. Give me the polyamory. Hurry up. So that was one of my 3 issues that I had with this. One of my issues is at the very, very end. Like literally, I think it's the last page. So I will tell Lizzie and anyone else who's read it after the live, when I'm not going to spoil it for everyone else. But the way that it's ended, for me, it could be redeemed by the sequel. But there was one specific line that felt... she's really thinking now. Is it the last page? Because she's going to go check it.
Lizzie is up and away.
Yes, okay. Lizzie, you probably don't have the same edition as me because mine's the American hardback. On the second last page for me, above the big section in cap locks, it's the section in italics, the second section up. So not the first one in italics above the cap locks, but the second one. It was just a little too cliche. It can be redeemed if it's done, if this kind of cliche element is done very well.
The italics?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you get what I mean by it's like a bit cliche?
Yeah, no, I get that. I do.
So if it's done very, very well in the second book, then it can be redeemed. It's fine. But at the minute, the cliche is too cliche, and it slightly ruined it for me. And then my other issue is that for 2 of the love interests out of the 3, there was a way that they ended up learning about each other's trauma as a way to connect, which I was absolutely fine with. But the way that they learned about each other's trauma, which I won't spoil, didn't involve a lot of conversation. It was very much like, oh, I have now kind of learnt this information in the way that they do. We're not going to talk about it at all. And I was like, but how are you developing this close relationship without talking about it? It felt a little... I just wanted them to talk about it.
I don't like
find out about the trauma, and then...
I don't stand for those talking about your feelings scenarios. So
but like, yeah. Other than that, though, absolutely fucking hilarious. There's one tab in here. I enjoyed many... Oh, no. There's 3 tabs. I enjoyed many sections of this book, but this first tab that you can only just about see because light was when I laughed so loud that my other half, with his gaming headset on, with all of his friends screaming in his ears, heard me laughing over that and turned around like, what is she doing? So that was just impeccable. It's about... well, actually, the author themselves has mentioned this line on social media. So I'm free to... We don't have the same edition.
It's probably fairly close.
For me, it's page 195. It's not the same. It's not the same pages because Carrie, who I've only read it with, has your edition.
Ah.
But I can say the quote anyway because the author themselves has said it on social media, which is, "You can't shoot me. I'm rich."
Oh yeah.
That section, fucking loved it. So yeah, the humor in this, adored it. I actually adored how much there was just man-hating, unapologetic man-hating.
It is on page 195 for me. You can't shoot me, I'm rich. I've just seen it because it also says you can't shoot me, I'm from Central Command. It's the same.
Yeah, yes. That was like my favorite thing in the whole book. Surprising because most of the chapters didn't line up with the pages when we checked. Oh well. But yeah, I adored how much there was just man-hating in this book. Not that I kind of condone that in real life. I do. But it was just refreshing.
But in fairness, they're going to hate men in that book. The main character has all the reasons to hate men, and women are treated like
off of reality, Lizzie.
No, I know, but like, there's a reason to hate men.
Yeah, but like a lot of the times, authors will have their characters, hate specific men, but they won't go as far to make them hate men.
All men are trash.
They're trying to like pander to the male audience, and I love the fact that Zhao just went, "Fuck you all," and did no pandering, just full on male hatred for anyone other than these 2. Well, I guess 3 men in the story. That's it. They absolute hatred of all of them, and it was refreshing. It was just so refreshing to have that viewpoint and not have it kind of tempered by the fact that most people in publishing would be like, no, we need to like still market this towards like men and boys. That's 50% of the market. I just love that they didn't do that. It was so fun to read.
I do think boys would still like it though, because there's a lot of action. There is a lot of like death, and it's quite brutal most of the time. So I do think the male audience will still enjoy it because it's definitely got stuff that male audiences are pandered to. But I agree.
If you go like 10 years ago, they wouldn't have let them publish it like this because they would have been worried that men and boys would have been concerned about it.
Well, they weren't convinced it was going to sell very well anyway.
She only got
they underpaid
Zhao.
Which is why they then didn't prioritize the sequel. They wrote something else because it sold so well.
We're not getting into 2024 now.
Yeah, the author's pronouns are they them, by the way. I slipped up before, but the pronouns are they them. But yeah, this is just fantastic. It takes off a lot of like anime and manga and other kind of cartoons like that. She is known, fuck's sake, they are known for loving those sorts of cartoons and those sorts of shows. So it was really fun to kind of see how they like interpret and include like the mech suits and stuff like that. And the magic system was, considering that there's a magic system in this sci-fi, which could have, sometimes it doesn't work when you try and meld the two together. They've done brilliantly. I think it was melded great. I loved it. And yeah, what we're here for, which is the LGBTQ plus side of things. It was too slow, but I love what we got. And that is the one I have the most thoughts on.
But they also base Zetian on a historical empress of China as well.
Yes.
So that is based on historical fact and certain points. However, it's done in a very sci-fi type way. It's based in like an alternative universe.
Yeah, they've put for God's sake, there's too much light. They've put basically a disclaimer in the front here. It says some stuff about trigger content warnings. So please be aware this book contains scenes of violence and abuse, suicide ideation, discussions and references to sexual assault, though no on-page depictions, alcohol addiction and torture. So those are the content warnings if you guys require them. And then it says this book is not historical fantasy or alternate history, but a futuristic story set in an entirely different world inspired by cultural elements from across Chinese history and featuring historical figures reimagined in vastly different life circumstances. Considerable creative liberties were taken during the reimagining of these historical figures, such as changing their family upbringing or relative age to each other, because accuracy to a particular era was not the goal. To get an authentic view of history, please consult non-fiction sources. So very much like, don't use this as your gospel, but also it does have a lot of aspects of different periods in Chinese history woven throughout it, which I thought was really interesting. And I mentioned at the beginning that the main character has bound feet, which was a thing in one of the historical, well, it's probably more than one of the historical periods in China. And it never clicked until I read from the main character's point of view. Like, it's obvious, but it's just one of those things that until it's pointed out to you, that it would hurt to walk on. It just never clicked. And then she said it. Like, the main character complained about it. And I was like, that makes sense. Why did I not think of that?
Yeah, it wasn't just the actual binding of itself that would hurt. Any movement of the feet would hurt, including but not limited to walking. And the continual care and having to like bathe them in these herbs because they're going to go off essentially because of like the issues with like kind of keeping the bones. They've healed to a certain aspect in that shape. But yeah, just how that then impacts the main characters, like literal every step. And then means that as someone who is basically a badass female character who doesn't need any help, occasionally has to be carried. And that was like a really interesting kind of dynamic to see, like requiring, in this time it's going to be mainly men who are strong enough to carry her because of all the societal expectations in this world, and her needing this male help of literally being carried. I thought was very interesting and a cool thing to add. But yes, that was my thoughts on these ones, on this book. I loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars. Just dropped it down because of the communication, too long to get to the polyamory, and the ending being a little cliche. And the girl I read it with, Carrie, she gave it 4 stars. So we both really loved it. We both struggled to put it down.
it was like one of those weird situations where like the writing is done so well, but structurally it could have done with some improvements. But I think, isn't it their first book?
Yeah.
I think it's their debut. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, I can only imagine what's going to come from them next.
I'm so excited for the sequel. I can't tell you how excited I am for the sequel. It's gonna be so good.
The other 2 books that I read. This is the actual one that I intended to be my book. There's not much to say on it because it's a nonfiction, and very much kind of teaching people about asexuality. I am demisexual myself, so it was interesting to kind of see this like represented and like walk through in that way. The author also isn't just asexual, she's also Asian, so she kind of has both dynamics to deal with, both racism and some form of LGBTQ plus phobia. So it was really interesting to kind of see that all combined together, and like the discussions on how society is so sex focused, like sex sells, but then asexual people, no, it doesn't. So very, very interesting book. Highly recommend, especially if you don't know much. Thanks, Lizzie. For my banner. But especially if you don't know much about asexuality at all, like fantastic book. And I couldn't actually put it down. I should mention that. There was one point where I took it with me to, vaguely ironic considering the book, to get my smear test. I took it with me and I was walking home like this. The entire way home, it took me 45 minutes to get home, and I was just reading it. So it's very well written. And then the other one is the 4th and kind of final, if you don't include the novellas, book in the Red Queen series. Would not recommend picking this series up. Would recommend finishing it if you've already started it and you didn't hate it, obviously.
Why would you not recommend people pick it up?
So it's one of those classic YAs, like from back in the day, where it follows a very kind of set script. You know what's going to happen. The series is about, there's red bloods and silver bloods, and that is
So I've read it. I'm just interested. Like,
no, I'm telling everyone.
I know. I was trying to get you to focus in on like the question itself rather than like the plot of it, because
people need to know that bit to understand my point, which is there's red bloods and silver bloods. That's the division. Gender still matters, but race, not really. And you already can tell where this is going to go. You've got a main like character who's on the red side of things, and she's going to start some sort of revolution against the silvers. And some of the silvers are going to be evil, and some of them are going to be good and help. But are they really good? Like, it follows that to a T, especially in the first 2 books. See, it was relevant.
I don't think it was, but go on.
Well, I thought it was, and I'm the one talking.
So much sass today, my goodness.
It's
my
the heat.
goodness. The heat is spicy.
It's the heat and the vodka. But yeah, so it's just very cliche in that it came out in that time. That was the formula for that time. And for the first 2 books, I can't really remember as much about the third. I think the third deviates a little more. It follows the script pretty damn accurately. Like, if any of you 3 haven't read the series at all, you know what happens in the books. Whatever you're thinking happens in at least the first 2 books. Yes, that is what happens. By this book, it's interesting to see it wrapped up. It's really interesting to see the discussions. The LGBTQ plus main character is a lesbian. I say main character, she's one of the points of view characters. So one of the main characters, she's not the main. And her lesbian issues. Wow, what a way to phrase that. But the fact that she can't be with her lover, because it's more about kind of continuing on the bloodline in this world than anything else. But that's more focused on this one, as well as more kind of complex and nuanced discussions about like power and transfer of power and equality. But like, so this one I think is done really well. If you've gotten to this point in the series, like, and you at least gave the other 3 books like 3 stars and up, like, yeah, pick this up 100%. Like, you may as well. It's the last book. It reads much faster than the rest of them. But it's not one that I would then say to start now, because there's so many other books that have been released later that are from authors who are from marginalized communities. I don't know if Victoria Aveyard is in any marginalized community in terms of LGBTQ plus. She may be, she may not be, I don't know. But she is white. And the kind of the starting premise of this is that red is like Black and Asian and Indigenous and Hispanic peoples, and that silvers are like white people. And it starts out at that. And so there's a lot more books that you can read nowadays that have kind of the same topics, but written from an actual point of view from someone who's experienced it in their lives, which adds a lot more nuance straight away. You don't have to wait till book 4, where she's obviously, like, you know, Aveyard has grown, has learnt a lot, like kudos to her, but we don't need to go to white women to look for views on racism.
Agreed.
So, that is why
I DNF the series halfway through book 3.
King's Cage.
Because there is such a tonal shift in that book versus the first 2, which are very script based, which is why I enjoyed it, to be honest, because it very much reminded me of, and I hadn't read either of these at this point, but it reminded me of Hunger Games meets ACOTAR. And like there's like the way that it's written and what's happening and like the trials that she goes through and things like that. And then the third book is so depressing, and the main character is everything is so bleak, and it just gets more and more
the
bleak.
content warnings for that book are a book in and of themselves.
And I was like, I didn't read this for this. It's not even that it's realistic in that it's traumatizing because they're at war. Like it's just hard work. And I was like, I had the 4th book, and I was like, I think I got like 100 pages from the end of the 3rd book, and I was like, I'm gonna read the first 3 chapters of the 4th book, and if the tone shift hasn't shifted back, I'm just gonna DNF. And it hadn't, and I was like, I am just binning this entire series. I gave 4.5 stars to the first one. I thought it was great, and I do feel like if you enjoy Throne of Glass as well, it's very much like that. But no, not for me.
Yeah, I think that because it's such a big book, the tone does shift through the book, but it's not a fast shift. So if you're needing that fast shift after the darkness of King's Cage, then there's no point. Like, I wouldn't now try and make Hannah pick it up, but like, if you can deal with the 3rd book and you're willing to deal with that again for a bit, then sure, pick it up. Because there's lots of, you know, like I said, Aveyard has clearly educated herself and come a long way from even, you know, the point where she was at in the 1st book, where she was writing a book about inequality, but she was doing it from a privileged perspective, and she's learnt a lot since then. Still privileged, but a lot more educated. So if you can deal with that, it's worth picking up. But I just, unless you want to just like a very formulaic read and then very traumatic and then insightful, I wouldn't recommend picking it up now.
That's fair.
And those are my 3, so I'll shut up now and someone else can have a go.
Has anyone got any questions for Abby about any of those books? I have no questions, because the one I was interested in, I was expecting you to be like a way more harsh, Abby, because you made it seem like you had more thoughts, and I think all of the thoughts you said are completely I agree with them. But I absolutely loved it, and I gave it 5 stars, and I just ignored most of the stuff, the problems with it, because I absolutely loved it. It was something completely new, and I love the fact that these giant, like, massive fuck off robots, it's like Pacific Rim meets like every other kind of like fantasy sci-fi, but with massive huge mech suits. I loved it.
If I hadn't read it as a buddy read, if I hadn't read it as a buddy read, because those always make me analyze books more. But also, if I hadn't read it as a buddy read with who I was reading it with, Carrie from Caring for Books, I probably would have ended up giving it 5 stars as well. But she's also a lawyer, which does not help in this situation. This is what I mean. So she brings in all of her analysis, and I'm like, yeah, you're right. Damn it.
But no, so I'm just really happy you enjoyed it, because
I did. I loved it. I'm so excited for the next one. So definitely need to pick that up.
Has anyone else got any questions?
No, I asked mine. I got shot down and then I asked it again. So,
which Hannah wants to go next? Who wants to go? Who's going?
I can go if you really want me to, Hannah, or you can go. I don't mind.
I can go if you want, but the wind's picked up, and It's loud at times. I don't know if it'll quieten or get worse.
I can't hear it through the thing, but I did notice that your hair was floating in the breeze.
I've got the door propped open, and it's just like flinging open occasionally.
I thought Nathan was coming at you with a fan, because like the way he just came out of nowhere, and then you looked towards it, and then it stopped, and I just assumed it was just Nathan messing with you.
No, he's upstairs. This is just the wind and the door.
Okay.
Just enjoy the wind.
It is nice and cool, but yeah, it wasn't bad, and it started gusting. I think it's calmed down again, though, if you want me to go now.
Go ahead.
Go for it.
Okay, I will try and formulate thoughts, because the more I think about my books, the more I don't like them. So we'll see how it goes. So the first one I read was The Dance Tree by Kieran Mulwood Hargrave. Grave? Yeah, I didn't know if it's
sad you didn't like it. I'm sad because I wanted to read that, and now
I did give it 4 stars, but the more I think on it, the more I'm like, I'm not sure. It's quite despairing and depressing, and I don't think I was expecting that. I know it's so the only thing I knew about it going in is that it tends to crop up on LGBT book lists. So I was like, let's give it a go for this prompt, because it's been sitting on my shelves since whenever it came out. Is that February? I don't know. It was somewhere around there.
It was last year sometime.
Oh, was it? Oh, it wasn't even this year. Okay, nope. Yeah. Well, it's been there a while, and that it's set around the dancing plague in Germany, which I was like, oh, well, I know, like I've heard of it. I know a little bit about it. That sounds really interesting, and that is quite prominent in the book, and it is the backdrop. But you mainly focus on sort of one family and like a story that unravels. And it's her sister-in-law and her best friend who kind of have anything LGBTQ about them. And like her story is just very sad. I don't know it's a trigger, so I should probably mention it. But it is also spoilery, I guess. But there's a lot of miscarriages. And that is like a very prominent feature in it, and all the expectations and how we're like heavily influencing the churches at this time, because it's in like 1500s Germany. So like anything that is LGBT in it is just also depressing because of that like leaning on it. And the main character does go through like the thought process of like everything that's been drilled into her at this point, but she is kind of accepting of it in a way as well. Like you've still got her in the background muttering like, this is not what the church says, sort of thing. So it's like, I kind of came out of it feeling like this was not good for this prompt. But there is like a bit at the back by the author. Now I've got to try and get that page. I should have bookmarked it. It's literally the end, though. It's in the author's note. Is it there? No, it must be there. It was in like the first sentence. So I was like, oh, I'll see it, but it's not in the first sentence now. So I don't know. But basically, she was like, I wanted to give like all of my characters, because like she's got someone from Turkey as one of the characters in it, and at that time, not 100% sure on the history, but I think the Germans were at war with Turkey. So like there's some racism involved in this as well, because it's seen as like not a good thing that they're kind of like hanging around the town and all this. So there's quite a lot of issues that are actually issues, but she's tried to give them a space in the book around the central character where it is like a safe zone, because the central character she does feel these things when she first meets them, but like kind of gets around that, which I suppose is kind of refreshing given the circumstances of everyone else in the book. But yeah, so I came out of it very deflated. The writing was beautiful, but yeah, the more I think on it, the more I'm like, I might lower my score on like gut feeling. Like I just don't know. So yeah, that was book 1. So then I was like, I'm definitely picking up another one, because that's basically the only book I'd read this month. And I was like, I need to get a move on then. So then the next one I picked up 2 on my Kindle, so just bear with me. was Heart Haunt Havoc by Freydis Moon. And this is only about 120 pages. It's quite short. So I was like, I can fit this in. This is great. And the premise of this one is that it is a haunted house and they're like an exorcist coming to come sort out this house. And I wasn't entirely sure if both characters were trans or one was just non-binary rather than like transitioning, but the one's transitioned. And everything is just, they know who they are, they're completely comfortable with themselves, and it was just lovely to read after the misery of the dance tree. But my gripe with this one was just that there wasn't enough eeriness and haunting. Like everything was really easily dealt with in the sense of the horror that was meant to be going on in the background. And I had such high hopes, considering in like it's like the first or second page, there's already he's knocked on the door, and in the background behind them, he's like, oh, I can see an apparition like right now standing on the stairs, like lurking. I'm like, oh, it's gonna get straight into it then. And then it's like 2 pages later, the apparition is already gone out of this world, and you're like, oh, that no spooky stuff then. It's like first encounter, gone. And the way it's all dealt with, it's kind of like it reminded me a lot of Constantine. Like it's very like he's like a typical exorcist, like it's church heavy, religious based. But then you've also got a Norse witch in it, and that kind of religion comes into it as well, which is quite interesting that you have these different aspects of trying to deal with it. But I think probably because of how short the book is, it was just over too quickly and nothing was a threat really, because they're just kind of like, and poof, it is fixed. And I'm just there like, I was kind of hoping they'd all be a bit scared or there'd be some threat, and like the threat is kind of there and then it's gone in the next sentence, and I'm like, oh, never mind then, it's fine. But I did enjoy it, and there is a sequel that will follow the Norse witch in the same house, and I'm kind of intrigued to see what happens with that. So I am probably going to pick up the next one because I think that releases in September this year. I can't remember what it's called. There was like a little note about it in the back of it. But yeah, so that was much better going. It just didn't live up to my expectations that I was going for with let's have some spookiness. And then the last one, I'm not going to show the picture, and I'm not even sure I'm going to talk about it.
The sequel's called Willow Witch, by the way.
Sorry?
The sequel's called Wolf Willow Witch, because I was on Goodreads, because I'm adding that to my list.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, the last one I read was Double Booked by Lily Linden, if I remember right, which I finished today. And that one was like a coming out story, like from the perspective as it's happening. But it just didn't sit right. A lot of the stuff that goes on, it was, I don't know if I'd go as far to say problematic, but at least it wasn't a healthy relationship that was like going on within it, with like nearly all the characters, like everything implodes. And it's just, yeah, I find it interesting how like some of the drama unfolded, and then all of a sudden you'd like hear the other perspective, and like how the narrative shifted as you heard that was quite well done. But yeah, I mostly just felt stressed and anxious reading it, which I suppose is a feat that it managed to like evoke that in me. But it just means I kind of came out of it like, no, I don't think that was for me, especially as I don't know if it's fully sold as a rom-com, but I'd picked it up under the understanding it was a rom-com based on what I'd heard about it. And it is not a rom-com. There is very little to no comedy, and the romances, I wouldn't say were romances, it was more like obsessionable. I can't say that word. Is that even a word? It was an obsession. We'll just go with that.
Obsessive?
Yes. My brain really isn't working.
You're fine.
So yeah, it was obsessive, or it was like they weren't even interested but were going ahead with it anyway because they had this feeling that they couldn't call themselves bi because they hadn't seen the other side of that relationship sort of thing, and you're just there like, why is this a thing? Why is this happening? Like, I'm sure there's people out there that feel this, but surely this should be a more positive reinforcement rather than let's just go down most of the negative things you hear. Like, there wasn't a lot of positive interactions. Everything just kept getting worse. So yeah, it was just like not feeling that one either. That was the one I probably gave the lowest rating. And I think I'm just going to stop there because I don't like ragging on books, but just it's still fresh. I only finished that like an hour, 2 hours ago. So yeah.
I do think it's important though to point out when stuff like that makes you feel uncomfortable, because it's making you feel uncomfortable for a reason. And having just read the synopsis on Goodreads, I wouldn't pick that up. There's no way.
I like not knowing much.
But like what you've just said as well, like I read the synopsis and go, okay, yeah, I can see why you think it's problematic. The fact that it says that she doesn't want to give up her happy straight life, I hate that implication anyway.
Yeah.
And it says like the whole thing is that she'll be Gina by night and Gina by day and George by night. I'm like, okay, that kind of feels a bit odd that they've gone down that route. So I understand, and it will make you feel uncomfortable for a reason. So
I didn't mind the whole double life aspect that's going on as she's like starting to figure this out, but it was just a lot of the interaction was like not so good throughout that, and the communication between the double lives. Like there's an attempt at polyamory, but it doesn't go well. And like there's a lot of jealousy that crops up in all this, and it's just like, I just don't feel good about this. Like, no, not vibing.
No, I think Lizzie's hit the nail on the head though. I think sometimes things can make us uncomfortable because our views need to be challenged, and sometimes things make us comfortable because the author's views need to be challenged. And I think if you take the time to think about it, it's usually pretty straightforward which one's which. And I think the fact that Lizzie's reading the synopsis and is like, nah, I think it's you're not the problem. So
okay.
Yeah.
But yeah. That was probably a case of me not liking to know much did me in. I just kind of, as I say, was going in under the illusion that it was a rom-com, so I was expecting to be all light-hearted and fluffy, and it was not. And I was like, oh, okay, should probably DNF it, but I don't like DNFing, so I will slog it out. And yeah, probably should have DNF'd it. But yeah, it's done. But yeah, I will shush now, unless anyone has any other questions.
Out of the three, which is the book you'd recommend most, like out of them, which one would you recommend?
Horn Havoc, probably. It's the one I enjoyed the most. Like, it did make me chuckle a bit at times with some of the stuff that they said. And just everything about it was way more positive. It was just the only thing that brought it down for me was the mystery and the horror aspects that I was really hoping were going to be prevalent. Just didn't. They weren't sort of. They didn't have enough bang to them. They were there, but resolved quickly, so it didn't like keep you on the hook for it, sort of thing. But yeah, I did enjoy it, as I say, and I'm gonna read more by them. So
for the book about the dancing plague, how was the sections of the book that are actually about the plague? Like, how were those?
So it was kind of all from a religious aspect, or at least with that bleeding into it. So they live on the outskirts of town at a farm, and you'd encounter it whenever they went into the village. Well, not the village, into the city. I think it's Strasbourg. It's just outside of that it was set in. And you'd see them, and you'd have like little glimpses between some of the chapters where it's like I think it starts off as like one woman dancing, and then it's like 6 women dancing, and you see like as someone else joins the fray, like the thought process is going through them, and it's seen as, I can't remember the wording, but it seems like a miracle thing, like God has told them to do this and it's going to fix something. And like there was a comet however many years ago, I think it's like 20 9-ish years ago. So however old the main character is, because she was born the same day, so she sees it all as like it's all her fault. This is an ill omen. They like burnt up the fields and everyone's starving and there's been loads of blight and all this going on. So they're like, this is going to fix it, or is it just a mania, or is it like religious zeal? And you see like bits of the church where they're like condemning it, and then they're like, we're just going to make them dance more. So like there's all this kind of back and forth with it. So it's very interesting at times. Other times it goes depressing again. As I say, it was very despairing most of the book. There's the odd happy moment, but they are the odd happy moments. But it was definitely very interesting. I wish there was a little bit more in it of the whole plague and how that's affecting everything, because it is very much focused on them and their farm. But like they have some musicians that are brought in to play for the dancers, stay with them. So you get like snippets back from them as well. And like the scenes are like described as like horrific and like what's going on, because people are like dancing till they drop dead. And yeah, it's just, it's mostly grim.
Sounds it.
Yeah. Hence I tried searching out happier things and was semi-successful.
It do be like that sometimes. Is this the first Kira Moore-Hargrave book you've read?
I think it is. I've had others on my list and literally on my shelves for years, but I think this is the first one I've actually picked up.
Another really great LGBTQ plus representation for Kira Moore-Hargrave, though, is The Deathless Girls.
I should have read that one. I've been meaning to read that one for literally years. I've got it upstairs.
It's really,
Oh well. I'll save that for Halloween, because isn't it The Brides of Dracula?
Kind of. In like the loosest sense of the word, I'd say.
Okay.
It's based on The Brides of Dracula.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I will read it later this year and see if it redeems. As I say, not that I rated that one badly. It's just, I do like a book that breaks me, but I was not in the mood for a book that is gonna potentially break me.
Kira Moore-Hargrave, make sure you pick up them when you do want to be broken, because I don't think I've read anything by that author that I haven't felt sad afterwards. So as an aside, if you see Kira Moore-Hargrave, just prepare that you might feel things afterwards, and like not things necessarily.
Okay, good to know. Like, again, usually I'm up for it, but I hadn't been reading much, been in a bit of a slump. I wanted something fluffier. Or with it being historical, I was like, I usually like historical. Like, it's usually fascinating, but then it's mostly focused on the family. So I was like, it's not even vibing with that aspect as much as I was hoping, which I think I'd seen quite a few people comment on, of like, they were kind of expecting more of that. But yeah, no, I still rated it high. Just, wish it was happier.
That's fair. Okay. Hannah, other Hannah, do you want to go?
Hopefully it's happier, even if you didn't like it.
It was happier. It tried really hard not to be, but I've actually went and grabbed a couple of others that I'm happy to recommend that are LGBT. So Alexis Hall is a gay romance author that Olivia Savannah from Olivia's Catastrophe adores. And they read their indie stuff before their traditionally published stuff came out. And Boyfriend Material is one of their first traditionally published books. Because of that, it is far more sanitized and far longer than other books by Alexis Hall. And I will say, I will not be continuing this series, but I would be happy to try some of the indie ones based on what Olivia has told me. So, Boyfriend Material follows Luke O'Donnell, already a red flag. I really struggle with books where the characters have my name, because if they're not killers or funny, I don't want to know. And I'm saying that because in The Murder of Graham Catton, the main character is called Hannah, and she doesn't know if she's killed her husband or not, and I was here for it. But Luke O'Donnell is a wet drip. Luke O'Donnell his dad is a rock star. His mum is an ex. Go on. Well, Abby's just like full on wetting themselves now.
I'm crying.
His parents are both rock stars, but they've been divorced. He hasn't seen his dad since he was 3 years old, but he is routinely in the paparazzi because people stalk him because he is this famous person's son, and because he's just so hopeless at everything. He's just so terrible. Like, oh my god, he's so, what is he like? He is constantly being papped drunk or doing drugs or blowing guys in an alley or just general shenanigans, right? And unfortunately, a year or so ago, his boyfriend Miles broke up with him and then sold their story to a newspaper for 50 grand. And Luke now can't trust anyone. Nobody. Not even his group of 20 best friends that he has in a group chat and texts on a regular basis. Can't trust anybody. Can't trust his mum, who literally is all up in his business all the time with her best friend. Can't trust anybody, but the point being that he clearly does trust people, and it's just that he's so I'm so tortured and broody, and I don't care. Basically, he can't trust anyone. He loses his job. His life hits rock bottom. He is quite clearly depressed. His flat is a state, and he gets this new job working at a beetle charity. And basically, because he's like a rich and famous kid, he like schmoozes the sponsors. Except he went to a nightclub, he flirted with a guy, and he came out of the nightclub stumbling over because he'd messed it up, and he got photos taken of him like falling down this curb, which he wasn't drunk, he just fell, but everyone like sold this story that he was clearly shit-faced. The sponsors start dropping out. This is all in like the first few chapters as well, by the way. This is not like spoilers for like the rest of the book. This is literally like the first 3 chapters. All of this shit goes down. The sponsors start dropping out, and his boss basically tells him that he needs to get a boyfriend. He needs to prove to the press that he is a sensible being who can date a sensible person. Otherwise, they're going to fire him. And he acknowledges very early doors how fucking homophobic it is that they expect him to be in a stable relationship because sponsors are dropping out because of essentially his gay ways, which is just a thing that gets thrown around. And kind of like, I've talked about this before on my channel, where it's lampshaded, where basically a artist will talk about a subject and lampshade it, but won't actually do anything in their narrative to further the conversation or find a way to like rectify the situation or kind of give a solution to it. They just kind of go, this exists. So it's kind of like when a white author goes, ugh, and racism, right? Am I right? And it's like, you're not doing anything to further the conversation. You're just kind of, anyway, that's what Alexis Hall does with this a little bit. And that bothered me. Enter stage left, Oliver Blackwood, who is a lawyer. He's a vegetarian. He's very nice. He's very sensible. He is everything Luke wishes he was in many ways, in that he has a clean flat, a decent job, people like him. They went on a date 100 years ago, and Oliver refused to kiss Luke. So Luke took it personally, and they've not spoken since, but they've got a friend in common who thinks they'd be great together. And when Luke goes to his friends and says, I need a boyfriend and I need him yesterday so that I can keep my job, everyone suggests that he goes out with Oliver. Oliver is done dirty in this deal, straight up, because like Oliver is the reason this book got 2.5 to 3 stars and not just 2 stars, because the writing is not bad. There's nothing wrong. It's a very easy read, but I could not fucking stand Luke or any of the decisions he makes hereafter. Luke is a perpetual self-sabotage person, and what pissed me off the most is I fucking love a fake dating trope. It's one of my favorites. It's one of those like you're forced close proximity, they've got to learn about each other, they've got to work together because they all have this end goal, right? To all the boys I loved before, Love Hypothesis, like those stories that have like the fake dating trope, mwah, chef's kiss. This one, they're not fake dating. They're in a relationship. It's so like he literally stays at Oliver's house the first night, and Oliver like cooks him breakfast, and they spend the whole day together, and they're just like working and like being in each other's company. And it's just like, I'm getting so frustrated that you two are quite clearly together. You spend every waking moment together. You live together, basically. Like, Luke straight up at one point just like moves in with Oliver, essentially, and like he still has his own place, but he like tidies his flat for him, and they keep making space for each other. Like, they eventually like do other shit, like they do all this stuff together, but they're like, but it's not a real relationship. And I'm like, then what is? Then what is? Like, because what you're doing is a relationship. The only thing you haven't got is the label, and you're pissing me off. So I got really frustrated with it. And then, like I said, Luke is a perpetual self-sabotage being. So he sees that there are things in the press about him. He freaks out. He breaks up with Oliver. He finds out something about his dad. He freaks out. Oliver breaks up with him. And like it's just constant. It's just this constant cycle of Luke fucking up, being so self-aware that he knew this was going to happen, but they break up anyway. Luke fixing it and essentially getting his friends to come and like back him up and like solve the problem. And like it's a romance, so it ends happily ever after. But I just don't care about it. I don't care about Luke to the point that I'm actually unhauling husband material. I have no interest in reading it. But I'm happy to try something else by Alexis Hall. This is not a deal breaker for the author as such, because like I said, the writing was fine. There were so many opportunities where this could have been a really poignant, beautiful romance. Really clever. Like, some of the banter was great. Like, some of Oliver's one-liners were really great. But there were moments where I was like there are characters who have cancer. There are characters who have body dysmorphia. There's a whole spectrum of different things to talk about in this book. But because Luke is so fucking self-centered, it just doesn't happen. And his best friend is essentially Bertie Wooster from us, like the Jeeves series. Like, he is an absolute parody of what we imagine the British aristocracy to be. And I'm almost 100% sure that his name is something like Alex Barty or Bartholomew something or other, with like 3 surnames. And it's just, his wife's called Miffy. And I'm just like, I hate this. So, yeah, I was just generally really disappointed. It had so much potential. And I have texted Olivia to say I didn't love it. And I get away with it because Livia most recently rated a book that I gave 5 stars 3. So I don't feel bad that I'm returning the favor. I do feel bad that I'm not reading the second one, but not bad enough to read it. Any questions?
Nope.
You're muted, Abby.
I know, I realised. I think I covered you covered that all pretty well. I also think that you attacked quite a number of individuals.
Just everybody. Am I just attacking people?
All the time.
All the time. Always.
Sorry, I've only just seen the private chat. Okay, yeah. Well, if the shoe fits.
You know what, Hannah?
It wasn't even about you, but if you want to make it about you, we can make it about you. I make
everything about
me. On a public forum, that's fine. We can do that.
No.
Oh, that's why we got on, Lizzie. We both make everything about ourselves. That's why we got on.
Obviously. Duh.
That's why Hannah knows how to deal with me.
So the 2 that I'm happy to recommend, I think a couple of you have read these or have seen these about. The first one is The Library of the Unwritten by AJ Hackworth, which I have definitely mentioned on my channel multiple times, and I may have even mentioned in Total Bollix before. I know I've recommended it on the Instagram, which if you guys have not followed the Instagram, you definitely should, because everyone posts recommendations leading up to the live show. This book basically posits the idea: what happens to all those book ideas you had but never did anything with or never finished? They end up in the Library of the Unwritten. So say, for example, you're on a train and you see something that inspires a book idea and you think about it for a second, but you never write it because who has the time? It ends up in the Library of the Unwritten. And sometimes those books are so desperate to be written that they manifest themselves and try and escape back into the earthly plane. And it is down to our wonderful librarian to bring them back and keep everything in order. But unfortunately, go on.
That sounds like deep diving into an aspect of the Thursday Next series by Jasper Ford.
I've not read that one, but I will check it out if it's anything like this.
Recommend. Very British humor, but like that's just a part of it. Basically, summarize very quickly. She goes into books, things can come out of books, shit goes down. They use classics, probably because of copyright. But one of the things in there is a library full of everything that's ever been written, whether it was a published or unpublished book, and that like they're separated. And there is a librarian that looks after the unpublished books that have characters in them that are sentient, and try to get into the real world of published books, because then they feel like they've made it and stuff like that. And it feels like someone's like read that and taken that idea and went, I can run with that. So in my head, that's now going to be a sequel.
That's fair. Well, this is a trilogy. This is the first of 3. I've got the last one to read, and I keep putting it off because I don't want the series to end. I've TBR'd it 3 times now, so I have to read it. Otherwise, I have to unhaul it, and I'm not going to, but I keep putting it off. But essentially, there is a character called Hero who has escaped from his book, and he has found his author, and he's trying to convince them to write about him. And Claire, the librarian, needs to get him back. But in so doing, they explore heaven and hell. They explore different realms of that, different versions of that. It is not just Christianity. It has Norse mythology. It has Egyptian mythology in it. The main character is pansexual, and you actually meet one of her previous lovers, and there is a plot twist related to that was just beautiful. It has some really sad moments. It has some very funny moments, and then it has a classic action scene right at the end. I feel like this is perfect for any fans of like classic high fantasy but want it with like that urban library twist, because they do go to a variety of different realms. There is an angel in it that reminds me so much of Constantine from Marvel. Is it Marvel or DC? I can never remember. But reminds me of him. And Hero and the Muses are just hilarious. But yeah, some very, very sad stuff in it as well. It also has been comped about 100 times to Good Omens, in the way that it's got like the angels and demons kind of working together, but not really. There is a little demon who has social anxiety. He is the most adorable little being you'll ever meet in your life. Like I said, there's a muse who got kicked out of being a muse because she decided to write her own story. Like there's so many great things in this. Yes, Abby?
I was waiting. The hand up was so that I was waiting till the end. But I wanted to know, do you know the nationality of the author? Like, are they British? Is this
No, I think they're American.
Ah, impressive. Then.
I think they're American.
Because Americans quite often do not manage British humor.
I would say that it feels like it's not necessarily British or American humor. It's just funny. Like, I think it's just the pacing of it is just pretty solid. But yes, it's magical, and I recommend it often. Like, I feel like
I need to recommend The Air Affair to you now, which is the first book in the Thursday Next series. I feel like I need to recommend that to you with the knowledge that it's an older book.
Let me
check the book here.
I feel like I've seen the title, The Air Affair.
Yeah, I'm with my shelves. It's okay now. It was first published.
Oh, I've got it on my want to read list because someone recommended it to me because it's in and out of books. So I've already got that on my to be read list.
It was probably me recommending it.
Possibly.
Also, look at this cover.
That's not the cover that's on my Goodreads, but
no, there's lots of covers for it. I bet my nail getting that book out, and it's my middle nail. So,
I will just say, going back to feeling attacked, the reason this annoyed me so much is that the whole time these 2 boys are like, no one wants to date me, I just want a boyfriend. And I'm like, look to your left. Just look, they're right there. Like, why does no one love me? He's right there, you know? So
willful miscommunication.
But it's like they talk about stuff, but it doesn't go anywhere. It's just kind of, I don't know, it's very sanitized. The other LGBT book that I will recommend is Fence. This is a graphic novel series. There are 5 out. The 5th one came out this year, about a group of boys at a boarding school who are all there essentially as part of a fencing club. This is one of the main characters whose name has escaped me because it's been forever. Seji. He is a fencing champion. And Nicholas, one of our other main characters, essentially wants to be him, but it's quite clear in the subtext would also quite like to be with him, and it's like a real like enemies to lovers thing. I will say I read the first 4 volumes. They're not together yet, but the tension is high. But there is also a lot of other rep in there. There is, because it's a boys' school, there is a young girl in this, which and it's like heavily explained, well, not heavily explained. It's again in the subtext that they were a boy, they're not anymore. And she's adorable. I fucking love her. And she is quite clearly in love with Seji as well, but just for that, their prowess. And their roommate is clearly in love with them. And it's adorable. There is also another male character who just sleeps with everyone. And again, his best friend is in love with him. And it's like, why are you all so adorable? But I, again, really love the banter in this. Whether you like fencing or not, like this is just a bunch of really adorable boys being in love with each other. And I can't recommend it enough. Keris from Library with Keris recommended this to me when I first started BookTube, so 3 years ago, and I need to reread it. It's so fucking cute. So yeah, something for people who want wholesome, and some for people who just want shenanigans as a variety.
Cool. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I've got so many LGBT books that I could recommend, but we'd be here all night, and let's be honest.
Nah. Okay, so it's my turn now.
It is.
Cool. I have a stack next to me. Which one would you like me to talk about?
At least I gave categories. Come on, man.
Okay, this one I enjoyed. This one I enjoyed. This one I'm currently reading, but I'm close enough to the end I can talk about it. And this one was fucking weird.
Fucking weird.
Fucking weird, please.
Okay, I'm going to go through all of them, but Okay, so
start with the weird one.
The book I was going to recommend was not good, and I don't want to mention it because it was so bad. And I hadn't been reading very many LGBTQ plus books for Pride Month, so awful. But one I did read was Sister Maiden Monster by Lucy A. Snyder. Now, it's an ugly-ass cover. Ugly. Cannot. Ugh. But this follows 3 women, basically from the beginning to the end of an apocalyptic event. We start with Erin and her story. Then we meet Savannah, and then we meet Mareva. And they're kind of all intertwined with each other. They kind of all know each other. And they all basically become a different kind of the closest thing I can collect it to. So one of them is most like a zombie because she has to survive off brains. Another one is most like a vampire because they have to drink blood. And the other one is like a hunter, basically, and a tracker. And they're really good at finding things. And it's fucking weird. And I feel weird recommending this, to be honest. Because it's just it is in that level of what the fuck am I reading? But they find an eldritch being and they decide not to leave it alone. And then they find the consequences of finding an eldritch being and not leaving it alone. And that's not any of the 3 main characters' faults either. They just all eat sushi that has been fucked with because the eldritch octopus has been fucking normal octopus, and then they all eat sushi, and you know how that ends. And then a pandemic just ravages the human race, and that's why it's fucking weird. And the only person in this that is technically ever said is, I think she's either bi or pan. It's never specifically said, but she falls in love with another basically class of zombie. So she eats brains and the other one drinks blood, and you're not supposed to have sexual relationships because they don't know if you breed with other people. It's a whole thing. And it goes back to women being put into mental asylums. There's quite a lot of stuff in this where they're strapped to beds and stuff, and then they're sent to reassimilate into the world. But because they're technically still infectious, because you can infect people with this disease too. they're all really worried and like no one wants to talk to them. And she did have like a long-term fiance who it then turns out that they are actually a trans character, and that's a secret that they've been keeping. And they go to a BDSM club to explore that, but then they have the actual disease and they turn into a giant bat monster. There's just so many things in this book that is fucking weird. That being said, I loved it. I think I gave it 5 stars, but it's weird. Like I just don't know how to recommend this to people because there's too many things going on. But if you like weird books and you're not too put off by gore, because there's quite a lot of it in this book and it gets really fucking gross at points. And there's lots of like talks of like eating brains and like having sex and eating a brain and like drinking each other's blood and stuff. It's not for everyone.
However, me and Hannah are now like,
I don't think a single one of us was like, nah.
I do think the right audience will like this, but I think you would need to be a little bit more prepared than I was. I mean, the cover kind of gives it away that it's going to be a weird book, but like the back doesn't even tell you how weird it's going to be. Like it's just,
I feel like the tentacles on the front are a big old
yeah
hint.
I mean yeah so that's that one. I'm just gonna go down the pile.
Yeet.
The one huh
You just yeeted that.
Oh no, I just the one I'm currently reading is House of Hollow by Crystal Sutherland. I'm enjoying this. It's a, how did you describe it the other day, Hannah? Gothic horror.
It's a gothic fairy tale retelling essentially, but it's less of the fairy tale, more like insidious woodsy type stuff,
which I'm not really getting any of that, to be honest. It's not super, like it's not creepy at all. Like I've not been scared once reading this.
It's not scary. It's, I wouldn't even say it's unsettling. I think it's designed to be. I think for a specific kind of audience it would be, but Lizzie and I have read way more messed up stuff than this, so it was very, even Wilder Girls, which has a very similar target audience, was more insidious than this is.
I think Cold Boys Wood, Ghosted, and Sundial are more insidious than this. But I also think all 3 of those are adults, and this is YA.
Yeah, and it's decidedly YA.
Yeah, and I don't mind it. There's nothing wrong with this book. It's short. The LGBTQ plus representation I actually quite like, because the LGBTQ plus character in this is unapologetically LGBTQ plus, and like it's never like a questioned thing. It is just who they are, and they're very like punk rock, which is also, I love it. But that it basically follows 3 sisters who all mysteriously went missing when they were children and don't have any memory of it, apart from one of them definitely does remember it and has not been telling the whole truth. And it kind of, you're finding out the story. I don't know how it ends, but I'm really hoping it ends with death, because I want every book I read to end with death. That's just me. But yeah, I don't know. The main sister we're following, I just don't really care about her, because she's the least interesting sister.
She's like, the thing is, she is the most beige to show just how weird and whimsical the other sisters are.
Yeah, but like I kind of want to be in their heads. Like I'd love to be in Grey's head, because like what the fuck is up with that
I just
girl?
don't think we needed to be in anyone's head. I feel like a close third would have worked better, to be honest.
Yeah. My favorite character is Tyler at the moment, who's the boyfriend of one of the sisters, who's just found himself in this situation and is like, well, I guess this is my life now. And like he's just trying his best as just like a normal person who's found this really weird shit going on around him. So yeah, not much else to say yet about this one because I haven't finished it, but the LGBTQ plus, I think she's a lesbian. It's just very cool, very good. Loved it. The next book, I'm going to talk about Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I'm sure most people know about this book, but I put this book off for the longest time because I did not enjoy Cersei at all when I read it. And I don't know if that was just the frame of mind I was in, or the fact that I was really grumpy, that the fact that everything I didn't know about Cersei's myth happened in 75 pages. And I was like, well, what's the fucking point now? Like, I just don't want to know what happens next. So there's like many reasons that I was just being grumpy. But then I finally picked up Song of Achilles, and it broke my heart, even though I knew it was going to happen. I knew the entire time what was going to happen. Still made me cry though, didn't it? Still got me.
It will get you. It will get you.
And then it just continued to get me after the main event, and like the last, like the ending bit. I was like, please, can we stop? Can you just give me a break now, Madeline Miller? Please just give me a break. Because is it Patroclus?
I always call him Patroclus, but
whatever. Him and
it's easier to say than Patroclus for a start.
Yeah. But him and Achilles were just adorable. Very much. Achilles is like a massive himbo, in my opinion. And yeah, I don't know. If you like Greek myth though, and you like gays,
I will say, I recommend Song of Achilles as a gateway into mythology anyway, because I think some mythologies can be very, very heavily written where either the author, like, it goes two ways. Either the author goes, you don't know anything about myths, so let me just tell you everything. Or they'll go, you know who these people are, right? I don't need to explain anything to you. You just got to keep up and hope for the best. Whereas I feel like Song of Achilles does just enough to kind of go, this is the world we live in. It is not like your world. These are the things that are different. And here's the impact that has. Like, there's a bit where they start talking about Chiron, who is it Chiron? The centaur? Is it something else?
Yeah.
Essentially, but he trains Achilles, right? And he's trained many heroes to be great warriors, etc. But what's important is they kind of only reference that he's a centaur. They don't they don't rock up and be like, oh yes, and our centaur guy, and here's what he looks like, and here's the things that he does. You're just expected to either know who it is, and then when they react to something to him physically, it's normal. Like, having a centaur or a minotaur around is just a thing that happens, and you kind of just accept it because it's all part of this tapestry that just builds up everything around them. And I just think some of the way the lines are written is so clever and almost spiteful. Like, there's a bit where they're talking about someone's mum. I think it was like Patroclus's mum, and they talk about how she smiled on her wedding day, and everyone knew she was an idiot. Like, because only a fool would smile on their wedding day, and things like that kind of like build up the difference between his upbringing and Achilles' upbringing. But like, the way it's done is so well crafted that you can tell it took 11 years to write.
But yes, it's a good
but that's
one.
why I forced Lizzie to read it in the first place.
Now on to my last rec, which is one that I love, but I am not necessarily convinced the rep is fantastic. But I'm going to recommend it anyway. So, Vicious by V. Schwab. I am not... Okay, this dust jacket doesn't work with me. I am not the biggest Schwab fan. This series is basically one of the only series that I have fully enjoyed, because these are just terrible people. Like, all of them are bad people. It is her villain series, although I would hesitate to say they're villains and they're more anti-heroes. They're both... Well, okay, there is a massive villain in this, but we follow two boys, Victor Vale and Eli Ever, and their story into becoming superhumans, and that involves death. So there is references to suicide in this book, for a content warning, and it's dark. It's really dark, and it doesn't shy away from the grossness of all of that. So it is a little bit rough on that kind of subject. But Victor Vale, I did look it up just now. He is asexual, and that isn't really said in this book, but in Vengeful it is kind of more focused on Victor. because this is kind of Eli's story, his kind of origin story of how he becomes as insidious and horrible as he does by the end of Vengeful. Vicious, and then Vengeful is Victor's story, so you kind of see much more how he deals with things. But also, what did you tell me V Schwab was bi?
I don't know. I just know that they came out as gay in their 20s.
There we go. Which I didn't know.
I also thought that Schwab used she, they pronouns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know either. So this is an LGBTQ plus rep, but I kind of wanted the asexuality to be more less of like an afterthought.
Yeah.
Because it almost felt like it was shoehorned in, because it's not relevant to every story. I'm not saying that, and I don't think sexuality should be printed across and be made really, really obvious. But it very much felt like this thing about this character. Not to talk about the book series and the author we shall not name. But it very much felt like that. Oh yeah, Dumbledore's gay kind of thing. Like it very much had the same stink as that. So that's kind of why I'm like, I don't know if I feel comfortable fully saying this is LGBTQ plus, but the author is LGBTQ plus, and I enjoyed this book a lot. And it's just a really cool story about superhumans. But I don't know what else to say about it, because everything else is like hella spoilery. But it is insidious.
I guess that's kind of the problem, like with LGBTQ plus books, is that if it's like the romance side of things that has the representation, a lot of it will be spoilery to an extent because you don't want to spoil the romance to people.
I mean, there's no romance in this at all. Like
asexual, so yeah.
Well, there kind of is at the beginning, but like that doesn't end well.
Yeah. I was just gonna say there is a difference between like asexual and aromantic, because
I've learned from the last time that I generalized in our group chat. I specified in our group chat that I was generalizing, and still both of these two were like, nope.
Look, I've had a really rough Pride month. Okay, everything's got under my skin.
I was just trying to do the very basic level.
No, you're fine. Like this is what Lizzie's saying is like it is not you, because I feel like, you know, even earlier when you were like, oh, I slipped and I said this, like there's that there has been transphobia has been rife with like stuff going on like outside of BookTube and stuff today, and like this month in general. So Lizzie has been dealing with that because of another project they're working on for something else. So it's things like that. But the problem is, Abby, is lovely people like you who apologize when you get things wrong, get the brunt of it because you're apologizing, and it's just like it. So it just gets caught up. So no, like I absolutely understand what you're saying.
Also, just as well, for context for everyone, I wrongly gave an explanation for butches and femmes, and I gave basically, I guess, like the origin.
Yeah,
like where it came into popular usage, and then gave no further explanation. But the origin is like a decade old, so like that's totally on me. Like it's been a decade.
Nothing you said was incorrect. It used to be used as like it
was a slur. Yeah.
So it was like one of those, like that's an important, like to me, that's an important thing to specify. Like it's very much a reclaimed like identity now, but like it did used to be. And it used to be just, you know, for lesbian slurs, and that's just not cool. Anyway, what was I going to say? I was going to say something else. No, clearly not important.
It's fine. Are there any books or kind of sexualities that you don't think get enough I mean, obviously all of them, but like, is there one in particular that you feel like is not fully represented on your shelves that you're excited to read more about? And the reason I'm asking this is because as part of like a waypoint thing, I have written but failed to schedule loads of different recommendations for different sexualities, and I started with ace, intersex, and trans because they are three categories that I was like, I can find sapphic, I can find gay, I can find this, that, and the other. could not find those things on my shelves. So I was like, I actively feel like I need to read more books about those.
The only thing in the, other than obviously this book now, the only thing in the kind of asexual umbrella, ace umbrella that I have is the Bone Season series, where the main character, Paige Mahoney, is demisexual. And the author herself, Samantha Shannon, also identifies as demisexual. That is the only rep I can think of.
I don't know. I think aro ace, I think intersex, trans, and specifically intersex and not trans because they're different identities. I think I'd like to read more. Only kind of like, and I realized I'd been kind of gendering, not misgendering, but recommending the Desert Prince wrong because they are intersex, not anything else. Like and I realized I'd been calling it like trans and non-binary, which is not correct at all. So that
you have exclusively used intersex with me.
No, because I realized I realized that I had been thinking about it wrong.
Oh, okay.
So as something I found that I would like to read more books about is intersex because it's something I haven't seen before.
I feel like it's been more recently that intersex has been included in the LGBTQ plus banner, because I guess intersex is something physical quite often, and so I guess they didn't immediately feel included to the kind of the pride, like Rainbow Mafia situation, because it's not immediately kind of, a lot of the stuff that is under the pride umbrella is internal, and it's how you think about things and how you view things and how you think about yourself and how you think about other people, whereas intersex is very much you are born usually with like both sets of genitalia and things like that, and so I guess they didn't feel quite as included. It felt more like a medical thing than a pride thing, and it's nice to kind of have them in the group now.
It is interesting though because they get misgendered like all the time. They are like the biggest group that gets misgendered.
I mean, by doctors at birth.
Yeah.
Literally so many intersex people at birth will have an operation that removes one set of genitalia.
Yeah.
And often quite a lot of them will then, like a higher percentage than usual in terms of like the general population, then transition later on. And it's like, so did the doctor just get rid of the wrong one? Should they have kept both? The answer is keep both and let the person decide for themselves.
There's obviously legislation happening in the US with regards to whether people can change their gender, etc. And one of the things in it is essentially that you don't get to choose something along the way it's worded. I was watching a video about by Jonathan Van Ness discussing it, talking about how, like, when it comes to like trans and transsexuality, you don't get to choose, but if you're intersex, you must choose, and that's it. Once you've made that choice, that's it. And I was like, it harrows me every day the closer to this dystopic world that we live in we get. But I do think that part of the issue things like that get pushed through is that there is so many people who have no idea what it means.
Yep. But I think that's the same with Arrow Ace as well. You see the misinformation rife on TikTok throughout Pride Month around that identity. And it's because people assume they know and they're spreading the misinformation that they've been taught. You see loads of other creators who are Arrow Ace who are getting really riled up about the fact that everything is getting wrong. Like everyone's doing it wrong. The worst thing I read about Pride Month this month and how shitty Pride Month is the fact that under the umbrella of safeguarding, the UK Prime Minister wants to out trans kids to parents.
No. I don't believe a single word he says. Have you seen the video?
I have not, because I don't want to make myself even more angry.
I have seen it where he basically says, we thought we should be pushing maths, turns out we should be pushing biology. And I'm just like, oh.
At least it's been outed now that in private with the other Tory party members, he is an out transphobe.
Which will work out lovely for him, because all of the Conservative people will love that.
Well, no wonder he got elected by no one in the public.
Yep. But anyway, that was probably the worst thing I've read this Pride month. But what was I going to say? The other one is I'd like to see more like Pan and Demi rep, because I haven't read many that I have. And one of the best ones I have read with that representation is In the Ravenous Dark by A.M. Strickland. That's got really great Pan rep.
The Pan one was the one that I was most excited to talk about as well, because there are so many books that I've like looked up in hindsight that have pansexuality in them. Catherine House, for example, Library of the Unwritten is pansexuality. It's great.
But yeah, other than those are the ones I kind of am looking more, because I mean, I've got so many just gay male like on my shelves. I've got sapphic books coming out the wazoo, but there's others that I haven't.
That's fair.
And yes, I'm going to use the word wazoo, and I don't care.
I love wazoo. Out the wazoo.
But yeah. Has anyone got any questions for anyone at all?
Nope. No thoughts. Head empty.
It's too hot.
It is too hot.
That's my last thought.
I didn't know that Saarland had intersex rep.
Yeah.
I clicked on the link that Hannah has put in the comments down below.
Yes.
But yeah, Saarland is on my TBR. I did not know. Also, some like Hannah, hi, Waypoint, the 5th season. How has no one forced me to read this yet?
Do you know what? Talking about books that will break your heart, with great LGBT rep, that book is harrowing. And just when you think, okay, the worst things happened, we can move on now, something worse happens. And it's so good. And I'm mad that it's good, because it means I'm going to have to continue to be traumatized.
Yep. Also, Hannah,
I'm currently buddy reading it.
In this article.
Say that again.
Hannah should know that she's been name dropped in this article as one of Waypoint Books' favorite collaborators.
Oh yeah.
Carry on, other Hannah.
Thank you.
Anytime I take on a recommendation that's from someone else, I make a point to be like, this person told me it was great, because I like to share the love that way. But I can't remember what I was going to say, so it can't have been that interesting.
Other than promoting Waypoint Books, which everyone should definitely look out for, and Abby is also a rep for, so has a code. So maybe go look at their stuff to get a nice discount code. Has anyone got anything else to promote?
Nope. Not from me.
I mean, yes. If you use Abby FM, ABIFM 23, you'll get 30% off a full moon or half moon box from Waypoint Books.
Excellent.
And I put a video up yesterday if you want to watch it.
Excellent. Doing the most there, Abby.
We'd love to see it. I will say that in my Discord for July, we're doing Jane Austen July, where I have made 9 bingo boards, all related to different Jane Austen books. And it's just gonna be hosted on my Discord, but I'm going to be doing some live streams for just the Discord pals as well.
I'm gonna have to re-download Discord.
Yeah.
You all know how much.
I mean, I thought you were on the Discord already. You're like in there.
No, I'm on it. I just deleted the app.
Oh.
It's
Thanks.
just look. I don't look at my phone enough. I mean, I look at my phone too much, but it's just constantly dinging, and
you can turn those notifications off.
Yeah, turn the notifications off.
I need to, because the anxiety is quite high.
Or just check on the internet. Like literally, just check on your laptop.
Yeah, and
it does work now. This was also the problem previously, is that the laptop didn't function.
You can put your notifications onto only app mentions, so they'll only ding you if you're being specifically added.
See, right, personal issue here. That's all well and good, but then I'll forget to look at it for months. So like Hannah would need to like at me each day to make me open it. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone. So I need to just figure out a way of doing it. I'll have to look through the settings and stuff. But yeah, I just at one point just gave up. I also I've had a busy year.
It's been a lot
of time.
Well, if no one's got anything else to promote, I am going to end it here. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we are on Celine's channel next month.
Yeah, it's nostalgia next month.
Yeah,
It's,
nostalgia.
Abby and nostalgia.
Oh, it's Abby. Sorry, we're on Abby's channel. See, that's why I did a question mark because I wasn't 100% sure. Celine,
I only know because I checked my bullet journal last night.
I think I checked the graphic the other day.
Yeah.
Right,
It
we're
is
on
me.
Abby's channel next month. Next, the last Sunday of next month, whatever that date is. To talk about
When
nostalgic
is
books.
that? Let me see. It is apparently the 30th of July. So pending in case people have other commitments because summer is annoying and we actually leave the house, which is quite rude of all of us, to be honest. But yeah, hopefully the 30th of July. We will update. There is a Total Bollix Instagram and I believe a Twitter. Anna?
Yeah,
There is. Correct.
Yeah. So
I
you can
never
follow
use
those.
it, but it does exist.
The Instagram I have linked in my most recent Instagram story. So if you follow me already on Instagram, there you go. You can find the Instagram account nice and easy. So you'll be able to see any updates there. And all of us, also Celine, who wasn't able to make it today, all of us post updates and stuff. So just keep an eye on all our socials and you'll be able to see exactly when each of the lives will be each month.
Yes, couldn't have put it better myself. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and we will see you next month over on Abby's channel. Bye.